It's Bob Evans. I've been showing folks in my workshops what I think is a better technique for hand blending images, high dynamic range images, using several different methods. In this little video, I'm going to show you what I think is probably the most easiest and straightforward using the gradient tool. As you can see in this image on the right, it is pretty clipped in the highlights, and we've lost a lot of detail up there in the sky. The darker image on the left has plenty of highlights, but in the shadows, we're starting to get pretty muddy. So I'm going to select both those images, and then I'm going to right-click, and we're going to edit them as layers down here in Photoshop. Now, these images are pretty large. They're about 40 megs a piece. So it's going to take just a minute for us to load them up into Photoshop. I like to have the darker image on the top and the lighter image on the bottom. I just think it's a little bit easier to work with. So here we are over in Photoshop, and there is our lighter image. And coming up here pretty quick, you'll see the darker image loaded as the top layer. So once we've got that done, we will go up into the layers palette right here. And now we're going to select both layers with a command or control click. And we're going to go to edit, and we're going to auto align the layers. Here's auto, and we'll click OK. So this lines up the images so that there's no difference in the two captures between because of camera shake or the wind, for instance. So now we'll go back to the top layer, and I'm going to use the mask icon, but I'm going to click on the Alt or Option key and create a black mask, which conceals the darker image. And now I'm going to type the G key, and the G key is for the gradient tool. And now we're going to take that gradient and we're going to start dragging it down from the top until we get just the blend that we want. It might take a couple of times, and you can do this as many times as is necessary. And that looks pretty good. So let's take a look. I'm going to do a Alt or Option click on the mask itself, and that shows us the infinitely featherable mask, which is exactly what we want to see. And again, Alt or Option click on the mask makes it disappear. So there's our blend. Looks pretty good. And now to finish up, we can either do this in Photoshop or Lightroom. I'm going to do Photoshop. I'm going to go to some saturation, and we'll go up to maybe 20 points. Looks pretty good. But now I think I want to highlight some of the grasses. So I'm going to go back to the layers palette. I'm going to add a new layer, which is this icon. And then I'm going to change the blending mode to soft light. And now I'm going to close that. I'm going to use the brush tool, which is the B key. And I'm going to use the foreground color of white right here. And a fairly low opacity. This is only 19%. And then we're going to start to brush in these highlights, just like so. And maybe some of these grasses over here. Maybe some of the color in the lake right here. And then maybe the tree line. And maybe even some of the aspens. And maybe highlight this shadow on the hillside. And I think maybe that looks pretty good. We might add just a little bit more highlight over here. So finally, I think I'll crop down just a little bit with the letter C. And that's the crop tool. We'll bring down the top just a hair. Hit return, and that is more like the format that I wanted to see. So now, just to finalize, we do a Command or Control S, and this will then save the image directly back into Lightroom so that we can continue our edit or whatever we like to do in Lightroom. I'm going to go back over there, and pretty quickly here you're going to see the image that we've been working on pop up right between the two original images. And there we are. So here's our final image, and let's go full frame, and we'll just take a minute for it to load up. And as you can see, we have some pretty good looking images here blended together using the gradient tool in Photoshop. So that's it for the first video. Stay tuned. We're going to do a little bit more complicated one in the next session using 3 images, and also where we've got trees kind of hanging in the skyline. So that's it again for now. Stay tuned, and we'll see you next time.